All right. Let's keep it trucking here. Let's talk Shedeur Sanders. There's a lot that came out yesterday in terms of Shadeur's official visit, what he did with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he was in the city of Pittsburgh's airport, or the Pittsburgh International Airport, yesterday and did a bunch of interviews. I think that was pretty awesome, to be honest. I mean, I didn't take anything away from those interviews that felt too cocky or brash or arrogant or any of the bad words that have been tossed out about him. I took a lot of them and said, this is a pretty decent situation where he's being very open because he understands that everybody wants to know and he acknowledges the spotlight. I thought the Ian Rappaport backstory, where Ian Rappaport talked about asking about his combine plans and Deion Sanders handing Shedeur the phone and saying, hey, talk to him yourself, and Shedeur giving him those plans. I thought that was awesome. Shows a lot of who Shedeur is. I think Shadeur's impressing me the more that this goes on. I'm not saying I wasn't impressed, but I understood the noise, the cameras, the lights, the talk that came with Shedeur Sanders. I understand that the family that he grew up in and the guy who is his dad / coach kind of steers him in the direction to call out a lot of these things, which some people take as arrogant and brash. Some people take as overly cocky. Some people take as confidence that you need as a quarterback, especially when you have the limelight on you the way that Shedeur Sanders does. I took yesterday away and said, pretty good. I was pretty impressed with a lot of things that came out of Shedeur Sanders' mouth. I was pretty impressed with the conversations that were had afterwards. Now, let's dive into some of them. This is a big one for me. And I thought it was very interesting when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, what he's looking for in a team, and how the Pittsburgh Steelers may be becoming more of that team for Shedeur Sanders. As we move on, maybe the Browns don't seem like that guy, that team. The Giants don't seem like that team. Vegas has some upside. I definitely agree. And I also think that teams like the Saints have upside and some fun when it comes to a new head coach and Kellen Moore. The Steelers, though, they're a team that have weapons. They're a team that have young weapons. They're a team that has a defense and a head coach. And his words on the head coach were important. He said this to Kay Adams on the Up and Adams show in the Pittsburgh International Airport, which I felt bad for him, to be honest, because I could tell, like I've been much lesser of a situation, but I've done, radio and videos and all that stuff from these types of places. And you could tell the look around, like, nobody catch on to what I'm talking about or who I am. I'm trying to stay hidden. And, it's tough. It is tough to, again, nobody's coming up to Noah Strackbein, but you get that you are drawing attention to yourself. And when it's that big, I mean, you got to give him credit for being able to stick that one out. Now, this is what he said about Mike Tomlin, and I thought it was very interesting. Quote, I understand the mindset and why they win a lot, just how he is as a person, the values that the team has, and what he preaches from the top down is similar to my dad, Deion Sanders. Mike Tomlin and Deion, I don't think are the same head coach. I don't think have the same personality, but I do think that the way that they are a no BS head coach who protect their players stands out quite a bit. And it made me start thinking, if Mike Tomlin resembles Deion Sanders and we're worried about the limelight and the spotlight being too big on Shedeur and the conversation being too big about Shedeur, maybe, just maybe, the head coach in Pittsburgh is the right guy to help him navigate that, because his head coach in college, which is his dad, helped him navigate it in a way that led him to a first-round pick and to continue to develop and to continue to have historic seasons. And maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. I think Shedeur is a real option for the Steelers, and because of that, you have to look at both the positive and the negative sides of it and say, these are the concerns. How do you fix the concerns? How do you address the concerns? I think Mike Tomlin being Mike Tomlin might just address a lot of these concerns. Might look at it and say, I could handle this, because Shedeur is not Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell or, I don't want to do this, but George Pickens. Shedeur is a guy who's got a lot of attention on him, who plays quarterback. He's a Cam Newton. That's who he is. And Cam Newton, by all accounts, was a great leader and a great quarterback. Won a lot of games, was phenomenal. And I'm not comparing talent, I'm comparing personality and what comes around them. And if that's the case, maybe Mike Tomlin is the guy to be able to navigate that situation and keep it under wraps in the right way, because he's able to keep it under wraps when it comes to problems within the locker room. Maybe he could keep it under wraps when it comes to noise outside of the locker room and how to help his players move through it, how to help his team stay steady through it. I thought that was important. I thought that stood out to me. And if you're going to look for positives or ways to navigate the negatives when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, I'm not totally opposed to him drawing comparisons to the personality of Mike Tomlin and the way he goes about his business being the same as Deion Sanders, because Deion was able to tell Shedeur and help Shedeur get through all this while the spotlight was huge and growing. I mean, it's going to be the same in Pittsburgh, and you're going to want the same situation. Thought that was important. Here's the other one. This one's from Deion, that he said on a podcast that I thought stood out quite a bit. He said, quote, "The front offices are consistently, bad when they make not intelligent moves, when they find themselves in this place of picking early every year, and you have an opportunity to provoke change, and you don't when that opportunity is laying right there before you." This was in reference to Shedeur going to a team that constantly picks in the top 10, the Browns, the Giants, versus a team like the Steelers who doesn't. And you got to start to wonder if the Sanders family is somewhat open to the idea of Pittsburgh and sees the upside in that situation. And I think a guy like Shedeur is smart enough too, where he obviously wants to go number 2. He wants to go number 1. I mean, that's just the competitive nature of the situation. But at the same time, understands that you come to Pittsburgh, you're already a playoff team. You're already a team that's winning 10 games, whether you're there or not, because they'd win 10 games with Mason Rudolph. You come there, you got a lot more upside in front of you. You have the possibility to grow and start off here instead of here. That might be pretty big. And maybe Deion's just voicing his opinion on the matter because that's what he does and pushing that narrative just a little bit more. I think it's something to watch. I think it's something to monitor, because as we get closer, the Steelers are a real team. And I don't think the Steelers are going to do anything crazy and trade up for him. And I could be wrong there, but I don't think that's going to happen. What I do think is that Shedeur understands that his possibilities are all over the board. Deion understands that Shadeur's possibilities are all over the board. And they're somewhat open to the idea of the Pittsburgh Steelers being the spot that Shedeur goes to, because it's not about what happens today. It's about what happens 5 years from now. And in 5 years, there are a lot more possibilities, a lot bigger upside for the Pittsburgh Steelers than there is a team like the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants. Maybe, I don't know about the New Orleans Saints. They seem to be all over the board. But those are the 4 teams that seem to be in on Shedeur right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Sanders are opening up to Pittsburgh being that team. I have no idea how the meeting went outside of what Shedeur said, which was a 10 out of 10. Heard it was great. I don't know. I'm not in those walls. And to be honest with you, it's hard to get information from those walls because it's real small who sits in those rooms with Shedeur Sanders and Mike Tomlin. And there's not much of a, you're not sitting down. It's not John Gruden's quarterback room. It's get to know each other, have conversations. You're spending 2 hours here. What can we talk about? How do we get to know you the best? It's an expansion from the NFL Combine meeting to sit down and really nail in everything you want to know about that prospect before they head out of here. I believe it was good. I think the quotes from Shedeur, the sense from Shedeur, and the quote from Deion Sanders kind of gets your brain spinning about whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are higher on their list than they once were when this draft cycle started.